Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. If you're on the end of the phone or on Zoom, we can't see you, unfortunately, so apologies for that, but I'm hoping you can see us. So welcome, first off, to this webinar. We're super excited to be here. We get lots and lots of questions about QB Labs, and this is designed to be an insight into the world of QB and labs especially. My name is Raki Rajani. I'm the head of design here at QB. And to my left are three of our best, Yetu, Zane, and Tom, who represent product, software engineering, and design. So just very quickly, I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves. Just tell the world who you are and what you do.
Cool. My name is Yetunde Dada, but you can just call me Yetu. I'm one of the product managers here at QuantumBlack. I lead Kedro, which is, I guess, QuantumBlack and McKinsey's first open source product. Kedro helps data scientists apply software engineering principles to their data science code so that they can produce like production-ready data pipelines, essentially.
Nice. Thanks, Yetu. Zane?
Hi, I'm Zane. I work as a software engineer in labs. I've been here for the past 6 months now, so still a newbie. I work across Kedro and Studio. Studio is our analytics sort of metadata tracking tool, so it helps you track all the metadata around the data, it helps you plan your project, and sort of keeps the lifecycle of that up to date.
Awesome, thank you. As you can see, Zane is the only one wearing color. The rest of us are in black. But Tom.
Hey, I'm Tom. I'm a designer working across products and labs, and currently working on something called Performance AI, which is a tool to help data scientists monitor the performance of their machine learning models and version them throughout the analytics lifecycle.
Super. Thank you, guys. And thank you for being here. It's lunchtime, so thank you for taking time out of that. So just very quickly, a quick overview of who QB is, and then we'll get into some more meaty questions. So QB is the Machine Learning and Artificial Intelligence Center of Innovation and Excellence for McKinsey. We're about 400 people and growing fairly rapidly, I think, right, across the various disciplines that you see here and across the organization. And also across the world. So we have locations in Europe, North America, South America, Australia, all sorts of places. What that means is our teams are distributed, but the core of our team is actually here in London, and labs, for the most part, exist here in London as a unit of people. So what I wanted to do is get into some core questions. And the first one, which we often get asked, is what is QB Labs? What does QB Labs do? And given that you're all from different backgrounds and different disciplines, I'd love to get your take on your version of QB Labs. How would you describe QB Labs to the world? I'm going to start with you, Zane.
So as an engineer, QB Labs for me is a sort of experimentation ground where we try out new things. Sometimes they work, and when they work really well, like Kedro. Sometimes they don't work, which is still valuable knowledge, but it's a space where we can build cool things. We have this sort of whole kind of like hacky engineering culture, try things out, learn from some really, really smart people as well. It's just this breeding ground for new products and new ideas and testing them out and seeing how they benefit our users and what we learn from them.
Awesome, thank you. Yetu, how about you?
I'm going to tell it from the PM perspective of like how I think it evolved. So a few years ago, one of our amazing product managers, Jay Mulligan, decided to sit down with all the data science teams, so data scientists, machine learning engineers, and data engineers, and sit through hundreds of their retrospectives as they kind of worked out what were pain points on their projects and what was like best practice. From there, he constructed something called QB protocols, which is essentially our way of working when we go out onto client engagements. When I think of QB Labs, I essentially think of all this technology that has been built on the best practice that has been listed in QB protocols. It will be things like, I think now feature engineering. Studios just released a new feature on feature engineering. How do we dial into like this activity that teams typically do on their projects, and how do we actually help fix some of the pain points that they have there? I think Feature Manager kind of like addresses like some of the issues around like consistency of like workflow and how it's done. Yeah. So I always think of like essentially QB Labs as the hub for putting what is considered our best practice for how we do advanced analytics into product.
Nice, thank you, Yetu. Tom, from your angle, tell us a little bit about that and where you think Labs is going.
simple question. So I think a lot of the things that I really care about have already been said. I mean, Zane's mentioned user value. Yet just talked about how we address pain points. And for me, QB Labs is really, simply a systemic sort of way of structure to help people and our clients get the most out of the data, like in a way it's simple as that. But if you extend that thinking further, then it's really about that intersection between people and data, and making that a lot easier. And to me, that's really where design comes in. Again, working with both of these folks to get to those pain points and to understand what that means. And another lens, I think, is also that QB Labs works really closely together with our research community here. And, we have incredibly smart people who go to conferences, publish papers, bring those papers back that they're really excited about. And then we go about thinking about how we can incorporate all that best practice into the tooling that we provide to our teams to make sure that the industry as a whole goes in the right direction and we incorporate all this new thinking.
So you said something very interesting there, right, about actually what we do in labs is build products, but there is an academic side to this or a research side to this. How does that play out in your day jobs in terms of how do we learn from that and actually go on this journey of building software? How do these two things marry? You talked about experimentation, Zane, about some insights that lead to new products. How does this all play out in your day job? So tell me a little bit about what you do day to day and what those challenges are and how you kind of tackle them and encounter them. Zane.
So I think what that means is that we have really hard problems to solve every single day, which is really fun. It's nice to come to work and sort of sit down and just tackle this big meaty problem. And what's also really nice is that you're in a team. So we've got about 10 to 12 software engineers over in labs working across different teams. And it's really nice to just sit down with them and just tackle these sort of amazingly hard problems that probably haven't been tackled before. And not only just tackling the problems for the sake of problems, but to build products from them, to actually sort of empower users to make use of these things. Because I think what I often quite see is that we have all these amazing ideas coming out of academia, these research papers, these algorithms and all this stuff, but people don't actually use them because they're not easily available or they're not intuitive. And sort of in QB Labs, we take all of that learnings and we package them into a product with engineering help from the engineers. We've got PMs to actually drive the products. We've got designers to actually make it easy to use and package it all up for users to actually make use of all these really, really cool ideas and knowledge.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how you actually do that? So what are the tools you use? What's your tech stack? Give us a little bit more insight.
I think across our teams, we have our tech stack is mainly Python. So we've got mainly Python because we built data science and machine learning tools, and that's the Python world. But across our products, we do have slightly different tech stacks and architectures. So, for example, Studio, which is more of a web app, we've got TypeScript and JavaScript hosted on AWS. Some of our other products, like Kedra, which is more of a library, doesn't really have an architecture behind it because it's sort of more of a core library. But what that means is that we work closely with frameworks. And what's also really nice is because it's a library that we get to delve really deep into sort of the internal workings of Python. Which means tackling things that I've never had to tackle before. Things that are slightly easier to do when you're building higher level apps that are abstract away on more of the base frameworks. You can always use pandas, but for example, when you're building something that's sort of complementary to pandas on that same level of being a library, you got to really dig down into the internals of Python and do some pretty weird stuff. But it's really fun to do.
And you look very excited by that, so that's a good thing. So you mentioned solving some tough problems, but you didn't give us examples yet. Yetu, can you share any examples of tough problems that you solve? And what does your day job look like?
I can maybe just touch briefly on open sourcing Kedro.
Absolutely.
That was a tough problem for our clients. Our teams really enjoyed using Kedro on client engagements and whatnot. And what we started to find was that the clients would say, hey, can we have access to this tool when you guys go? And we're like, yeah, sure, here's the code. Here's the installation file for it. But they were like, how do we get upgrades? And we were like, we're not too sure what that model looks like. So open sourcing Kedro was one way for us to solve a really challenging problem on Kedro. How do we solve for a distribution model where you have access to an open source community model to support you with your continued use of the tool, or get access to upgrades? Open sourcing something for McKinsey was challenging because we'd never done it before. That what I really like about QB Labs is that kind of like, if you have a plan on like how you're going to do something, like people will generally just give you leeway to go do it, and we'll back you. Just make sure that you get it done. So it's really cool being able to pioneer and try new things here.
So do you feel like you're an entrepreneur in that sense?
Yeah, you definitely have to be. Like functioning entrepreneur, you have to be willing to respond to different challenges, and just be super creative about like how you're going to approach things.
So how comfortable are you all taking risks then? I mean, you've talked about solving hard stuff, playing with things. I mean, there's potentially some risks involved in doing that. How does that play out? How does that, pan out in terms of what you do?
You can think of it as like, how do we take calculated risks? So even when we're evaluating like product decisions and product features as well, you will have a look at like what sort of risks are associated with this feature that we're building, or with this product or initiative that we want to actually plan out. So one, being able to map out that landscape and then having, deciding on what is a decision framework for how you're going to approach. Is it, are we just going to leave it? Or we just need to be aware of it? Are we going to track it? Or are we actually actively going to prevent it? So you do have like a risk mindset, but it's complementary to the product. And I really believe it makes it better because you've accounted for those things.
There's clearly a lot of collaboration involved in doing that, right? You don't sit there and do that on your own.
You don't do it right.
So
Yeah.
I'm curious, Tom, can you tell us a little bit more about how teams connect, how different disciplines connect within teams? How does that collaboration really show itself up in your day-to-day?
Sure. So I think the best analogy is what you already mentioned, which is that sort of like entrepreneurial spirit. And I really think of all the different product teams as integrated and collaborating, and yet fairly autonomous mini startups. And, as such, my team is currently, 6 to 8 people, give or take. And that means that there's a lot of sharing of responsibilities for one. So to give you an example, earlier in the year, just a couple of weeks ago, we set our goals and objectives for the year. And we not only do that very collaboratively, of course, across the organization and within the teams, but we also own those across the discipline. And if there is a goal to drive adoption of a product, doesn't necessarily have to be the product manager being responsible for that, right? Like everybody is responsible for that. On a more day-to-day basis, I think a lot of it comes from the innate interest of everybody in the team. I work with a lot of people who are really interested in that close link between the products that we build and the feedback we get from users and the impact that we're having in their day-to-day. And so I have engineers and PMs joining me in my user research sessions, and reversely, Yetu and I just yesterday have been discussing, something fairly technical
right.
together.
It was like UX principles for CLIs,
exactly,
command line interfaces.
And so a lot of that is really ad hoc, and it's really, I guess you could say, it really comes down to the culture of people being genuinely interested in what everyone is up to and what makes success overall, rather than just loving the craft. We all love our craft, but it's for its own sake, there's no value in it, and I think all of us get that.
So you very nicely, Tom, transitioned us into the next topic, which was culture. So thank you for that. Tell us a little bit about the culture at QB. How would you describe it, define it? What stands out for you about the culture at QB? I'll keep going with you, Tom, for a second.
Sure. Okay. I guess on one level, it's that kind of like impromptu exchange, right? We don't only have that amongst teams. I also have that with, leadership and the CEO who meet in the kitchen, and you can have the same sort of conversations with everyone in the company, which is really, really helpful to make information flow properly. But then there's also a lot of softer things. Like I remember my second week here, we went on something we call Questival. So, it was a weekend getaway for the entire company. And, families and plus ones and children were invited. And that was a really good way to get to know everybody. And it's, that's a fairly big thing, but there's a lot of little things like that where the organization helps us connect to each other on a very personal level. And, that is really amazing in and of itself, but it obviously also goes a great deal in terms of helping, us in our work.
So you've touched on something I think really important there in terms of the things that we do outside of the office that kind of keep us a community and things like that. But there's also like facilities. I go and hang out in the meditation room every now and then. But Yetu, what's your take on what else we do to support the range of people that are here at QB?
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, I'm doing a software engineering bootcamp part-time. It was something that I knew was going to make me a better PM on Kedro. And like the fact that I have teammates who will spend time and teach me things when I'm being confused is just like really, really helpful for me. I think most of us like have like external things that you do outside of work that are super cool. I mean, for me, like I make a virtual reality film in my part-time.
Okay.
I will bring the headset.
I think we want to see that now. Thank you, Yetu.
right now.
Right now. I'll bring the headset and you guys can book slots to check it out. But yeah, you're also doing cool things, right?
Yeah, so, well, this is slightly boring because outside of work, I just do more coding. But I work on this really cool open source project called Zar. It's a Python library that executes the leak speed, but provides chunked, compressed, and dimensional arrays. Which ends up being really important for like parallel compute, which is becoming a bigger thing now. So it's a team of about, well, now it's about 10 to 15 of us, but when I first started, it was about 4 or 5. We actually recently won one of Mark Zuckerberg's open source for science initiatives funding. So we've got things are looking up for us.
Wow, congratulations, that's amazing. Very nice. Given that you went geeky on us for a bit, let's stay there for a while. What are the skills required or expected from your point of view from a student or a master's student or a PhD student, someone coming out of education looking to work as a machine learning engineer at QB Labs?
I think like one of the things that we're really looking for is this mindset of being open to learning, learning really fast, and just sort of taking and absorbing things really quickly. Like obviously some experience with machine learning and software engineering and having these good skills and best practices in there is good. But we care more about is that when you come here, you learn it all really, really fast. And personally, I did a master's degree, which had absolutely no software engineering. In fact, so Cambridge is very, very theoretical, and they were like, if it's useful, we're not going to teach it. And so I came here, and I think with like things that Yetu was saying, everybody's so open to collaboration and teaching you things and speaking to you in a way that, you know, even though it's obvious to them, they can sort of teach it to you in a way that you actually understand it, which I find doesn't actually happen all that much in other places. So yeah, I think what we're looking for is this capacity to learn and this drive to learn and to just sort of improve yourself. Because like you said, we have all these initiatives. You got software engineering bootcamp. We've got conferences, internal training. That's all open for you if you actually sort of have this drive to push yourself and learn. So yeah.
I think that's a really important thing for the world to hear. Right? So Tom, can you tell us a little bit about how QB and QB Labs supports technical development? And I don't just mean software technical development, but just generally in terms of skills that you may want to develop, things that you may want to learn that are technical and aid you in doing what it is that you do here at QB.
Sure. So there's a whole range of things. Like as Sain said, I think that the drive for wanting to learn is really important, and that's because there is a really rich support framework, and there is a structure for sort of like foundational learning and technical learning, and like the way we choose conferences. But to a large degree, it's just based on your interest, right? If you're really passionate about one thing, then when you ask for it, you will be given the opportunity to apply that on a project. So specific example, I was working with a front-end engineer who was really passionate about motion and physics engines. And then when we developed the visualization the next time around, then he took it on himself to make that a part of the project. And he learned it in the process, and he immediately fed it back into the product and the wider community. And that cycle is really important. Another thing I would add is that with McKinsey, we also exist in a much greater network of experts. And I think it's probably fair to say, if there's anything you're curious about at all, there will be someone in this company who's an expert in it and who you can get directly in touch with. And that may be, you calling up someone to have a coffee and, ask to exchange ideas. Or it may be you to seek out other opportunities, side projects. To give you a personal example, I've been working with a group called Noble Intelligence, who are looking to apply AI to humanitarian problems, some of them to dealing with the consequences of climate change, such as deploying AI for effective disaster relief and so on. That includes computer vision and a whole world of NGO activities and all of these things I was curious about, I wanted to learn about, and I managed to by getting in touch with the right people.
And so this relationship between QuantumBlack and McKinsey, I'm curious about how it plays out in other realms. Yetu, what's your experience of this?
So from like a product perspective, what we found within QB Labs was that we started to develop products for our data scientists, data engineers, machine learning engineers. But when they went out to client engagements, we typically do co-staffing on projects. We found that McKinsey users had the same problems, and also our client users had the same problems as well, because the things that we solve, at least on the analytics workflow, are actually global challenges. So what you find is that you just have an extremely large user base with like many different people that you can work with and collaborate with. We're super excited, I think, on the Kedro front, because I think open sourcing made it a lot more accessible to many people. So we have a growing community of people within McKinsey Digital and Analytics who love using Kedro as well. So it's just everyone is like a potential user, and it's very exciting to be able to collaborate with the firm.
Is that feeding back into your development cycles and your thoughts around the product roadmap and things like that? How is that helping you?
It is. Towards the end of last year, we actually managed to complete like a user research study about Kedro and like how it's perceived within McKinsey data scientists and everything. And some of those changes we're now actually working into the product to actually like cycle back and be able to go back to them and be like, hey guys, we've been working with you to fix some of these issues that you raised. What has been your experience now of using Kedro since then? So it does automatically feed back into how you develop the product.
That's quite exciting, right? To be able to get that very live feedback and do something with it.
Yeah.
We've got some questions here coming in live. So apologies, I'm looking at my screen a little bit. We've talked about the very large mix of tech and non-tech people. How was it for you coming in as a product manager, and how have you been able to build your product skills while doing this role here at QB Labs?
So when I joined, so my background is mechanical engineering, and then in my role before I joined QB, I think before I did an MBA in between, was kind of like a data engineering role / an analytics engagement manager role. An analytics engagement manager role is what you would assume a QuantumBlack engagement looks like. It's the project manager working with the data scientists and the data engineers and the machine learning engineers. So it's kind of a different skill set. In my role here, I'm actually a technical product manager, you could say. You still have the same, obviously, passion for users and passion for users' problems. Those things are consistent, but you have to try different approaches, I think, with product evangelism and product marketing. So because of the way that the firm is kind of distributed, it makes it easy. If your product gets adopted in one space by a group of users and they become the early adopters for the rest of the product to spread. So you have to be really creative with that. Stakeholder management is also interesting here as well, because we have different user groups as well. You would have have to work with key different leaders or in different sectors as well. But overall, it's really cool being able to try new things as well. I think one of the weirdest things I've ever expensed was fake Monopoly money.
Okay.
Because we hosted an initiative called Buy a Feature, where users could pay money for certain features on the Kedro roadmap to be built. So you really get to try different things, and we just have a very well experienced product group as well. So it is easy whenever you're facing a product challenge. to learn from someone and to just brainstorm with someone else as you try to fix it.
Nice. So that's one way that we decide upon how we're going to prioritize features, right? With Monopoly money. How else? Please share.
I'm going to one-up that. So there's this thing in programming called rubber duck debugging, where you talking through your code with the person is great because like you just bounce ideas off the person and like you just spot things. But if you don't have the person available, the next best thing is a rubber duck. So you talk to your rubber duck and you walk him through your code, and suddenly things just will be like, why did I do that? And so I thought, the best way to just not have any bugs is to buy a massive, fluffy, yellow duck that is about as tall as me and put it in the office for everybody to talk to and solve.
Everybody should talk to. Okay.
And so yeah, that's what I have.
Excellent. I love this. So aside from what to do with this life-size yellow duck, what are the other biggest kind of tech challenges you face on a daily basis? So how are you going about this process of building software, and what are the real technical challenges you're facing?
I think like as someone quite junior, the coding bit is really interesting, but where I find the most value and where I'm learning the most is in sort of sitting down before actually going about and starting any sort of actual engineering, but like designing the solution, what it's going to look like to users, how it's going to fit in the code base, what repercussions it's going to have for other components in the code base for other products as well. And then things about like, is this going to break something else that somebody's depending on, which I never really had to think about before because I've always been building my own things. And so in this case, we're sort of distributed. You really have to think about things and design them carefully because once it's out there, you can't take it back. And the second thing is that because we're really sort of user-oriented, we talk to our users quite a lot, which is something I'm really enjoying as an engineer. I get to actually just walk around the office and like whack people around to give me feedback, which I find really helpful because it's collaboration on a level instead of just collaborating between teammates. You're collaborating with the people that are using your product as well, both within QuantumBlack, McKinsey, and also open source people. I love going on GitHub issues and talking to people and finding out what their pain points are, why this thing is broken, and getting solutions from them as well, and having them actually contribute back and review and learn from them, and the other way around. I think that's the sort of best things that we're doing in terms of technical sense here.
Right. And Tom, for you, Zain and both Yetro and Zain have talked a lot about users and taking feedback and putting that back into the cycle of building what we build. How is that playing out for you? How do you work with the wider team to ensure the user is at the front and center of what it is we do?
Sure. So part of it is just removing the barriers of communication. So whenever, at any given point in time, we have a good view of which of our users are actually using our product on a live project with the client. And that, of course, means that we prioritize, anything that they throw at us. The stakes are really high, pressure is really high, and often that means that they will kind of ask a desperate sort of request on a Slack channel. So that's how we're connected very quickly, and then immediately we'll follow up with a phone call to elaborate, to get down to, okay, this is what you're asking for, but what's the actual underlying problem? And then we'll, design what we think might be a solution or patch for that, and deploy it just as rapidly as we can. And we get a lot of really positive feedback about exactly that process, responding to those live client challenges, within a day or two. But that obviously you can't do that all the time because it would just be really messy and would end up in a very convoluted product. So then it's about how do you scale this up according to the timelines that you're looking at, and yet to mention the sort of large longitudinal research study that they did last year, and we'll do anything in between. So when a project is concluded, we'll do project retros with the teams to see if anything has arisen here that might become an issue or an opportunity for future client projects. And then another lens on that is looking across the entire labs experience, because there's a lot of opportunity, obviously not just within that little niche that every product is addressing, but also how do they interface? How does a product manager communicate insights generated within, a data science tool. And and that's something else that we look at as well across all the teams to see where those synergies are.
A lot of you have referenced all of you actually have referenced the research work that some of our teams do, right? So having a view on what's next, or really diving deep into problems and both technical areas and other things. What do you know about that? How have you guys been involved in any of those things? And how do you get involved in that more experimental work, including publishing and going out into the rest of the world?
So I think this is actually pretty good timing, because we've actually just open sourced CausalNext, which is sort of this causality inference library that we've just published, which actually comes out from some recent research works that came out about maybe 2 or 3 years ago around sort of state of the art.
It's been 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah, at New York's this major data
Yeah.
science conference.
And so we've open sourced that. I've worked a little bit on that, in the sense that once it was open source, I went onto the public repo, collaborated with some of the feedback that we were getting from users, implementing the fixes, all the sort of early stage teething problems that we have. And then I think from the work that we've done there, we've also been able to spot improvements and other sort of auxiliary areas to causality inference, which is an area that I think what a lot of the people around here are interested in. And we're hoping to contribute back to the sort of academic space in that area sometime this year.
And you will have an opportunity to do that if you want to contribute to that type of work?
I think, as long as you can do whatever you're interested in, right? Like Yeti was saying, it's very much entrepreneur sort of space. It's a startup. If you're interested in something, you just sort of start doing it. And so I didn't work a lot on CausalNext, but when it was open source, I was really interested in it. I was really interested in sort of the area of causality inference. And I was like, you know what, let me go and start learning a little bit more about it, what it's all about. I read the papers, I opened a few pull requests, collaborated with the users, and I'm going to sort of push a little bit more ahead this year and hopefully get more of some foot standing in there.
I guess maybe an additional thought is that whatever your skill set is, you can still complement the project. Because I know part of Performance AI has a live model performance tracking component, which also evolved out of our data science research and development. So even just having Jess on as product manager for that is also super interesting. So and CausalNext is led by Wesley, another product manager here. So you can contribute to all of the data science research projects with your skill set if you want to make it happen.
Yeah, and it sounds like you guys are very good at kind of saying, I want to do this is my interest, and now I'm going to figure out how I get involved, which it seems like people respond here very well.
I think it's part of the culture as well, right? Nobody's going to say, this is my thing, don't touch it. It's, please, if you're interested in it, come and help me out.
Absolutely.
And we're like that with everybody, which I really, really love.
Very nice. I'm conscious of time and the fact that there are a few questions kind of coming into the fold. So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to basically start throwing some of these out at you, and you can pick whoever decides to answer them. So first one, what do we look for in candidates? What are the skill sets and other ideal requirements? I think let's start from a software engineering point of view.
So I think we kind of touched on that, and that what we really want is for you to have this sort of drive for learning and to come in. So we hire across different experience levels. I think at the moment we're interested in sort of senior software engineering people. So coming in with knowing best practices around software engineering, having sort of good engineering skills. And that's pretty much it. We're not really looking for much else. As long as you're a good engineer, we're happy to have a look at you.
And what's the interview process like?
So I think it's pretty typical. So you have a technical interview where we deep dive into your technical skills. I think the one thing that might be slightly different is that we also have this personal experience interview where we really get to know you as a person, figure out how you'd fit in with the culture, evaluate stuff like your drive for learning, things like that.
That's very nice. From a product management point of view, what kind of skills and tools are we expected to have, or are you expected to have?
Interesting question. So as product managers, we actually range in terms of experience. We have product managers that they came from a business marketing lens and then eventually landed up here at QB Labs. And then we also have more technical PMs that might have been like computer scientists back in the day, and then now product managers. I think consistency on like how you how passionate you are about user experience and building things that are that make you delight users would be one. Obviously, your exposure to building roadmaps, prioritized roadmaps, working with engineering teams as well would come through. And I believe we're hiring across like different levels as well on the PM track, because there really is like space to grow and be mentored here. So yeah, if you're game.
If you're game, I like it. So sticking on product for a while, we've got a very specific question here that's not related to hiring, but what tools do you use for product road mapping? And what are your 3 top do's and 3 top don'ts?
So in terms of like managing your backlog, you're obviously going to be using, we use Jira internally. On the GitHub team, we're actually thinking about switching over to GitHub issues, GitHub projects, because it links your PRs quite nicely to your task. Managing your roadmap. So this one's typically actually done, you're going to hate this, by a PowerPoint. It would be a slide with what are the upcoming themes that you'll be exploring over the next like quarter or half year. We are very careful with communicating to senior stakeholders that these are like experimental tracks that could fail, because a roadmap should be built like that. And they don't have timelines as well with when you should be finishing things. We're not expected to do that too. That was a bit of an exercise with managing expectations. And because of that, it means that you still have freedom to, if you discover along the way that your product theme is not actually working out, or it's not doing meeting obviously the goals that we set in the beginning of the year, it's not contributing towards that, then you can still park it and it's okay. So it would just be a PowerPoint slide with the upcoming themes that you're going to be exploring. It's like super chill, and that makes everyone happy because they're like, well, we can kind of see at a high level what's coming next. Kendra, we actually post ours now on GitHub, so you can actually see the upcoming ones that we have.
Nice. So very much a test and learn approach going on there in terms of how it evolves. Just following up on that, a very specific question around, Tom, I'll point this at you, how we get users' feedback and how that manifests itself in products and the prioritization process.
Yeah, I mean, really good question. And I have to pass a question back, which is like, what user do you mean, right? Because we're now talking about, especially with Kedro, we're talking about the wider sort of open source community. We have our clients who are users. We have, McKinsey folks and, QB, in my case, data scientists, which is very specific. And the way we get that feedback loop going depends to a degree on what that looks like. So, for example, on one extreme, in terms of data science and AI in general, there's often these themes emerging, right? Like last year, there was a lot of talk about the ethical implications again in terms of fairness and explainability, and we want to help our clients have a good answer for that and standardize some best practices of that, and then that can start by clients asking us directly, or by us raising conversations about things that we feel like might be important and emergent themes over the next years to come. And with those sort of more trend-based themes, I might say, we then engage a lot with our data science R&D community to see what do we actually consider best practice, and then it kind of comes from that direction. While as on the sort of active users front, there's a range of things I already mentioned. So there's the feedback on Slack tends to be very granular. It's like, oh, there's this really specific thing that I need to do. Can you help me do it? But whenever we conduct interviews or research sessions with users, I try to do 2 things. Half of the session to really understand the problem at the base of what they are asking for in the moment, but then also include a sort of more general, what you might call discovery part of the interview. And over time, those add up such that we can, as a team, look at the transcripts of all of those conversations and say like, oh, actually, X number of people have talked about this topic. And that's when we'll start, focusing on that and doing, asking some more specific questions around that. And then lastly, of course, quantitative feedback plays a big role. So over the last couple of months, we've had a very strong push to instrumentalize, all the functionality that we provide in, web apps. It's a little bit easier, but also in Python libraries, to make sure that we can actually track the use of those pieces of functionality and then ask specific questions around that. Like, if something is not used, is it because it's not found, or is it not needed? And it's that kind of like detective work that starts from there.
Sorry, just to interrupt for a second, quick interlude. If you have any more questions on the line on Zoom, please submit. I think we have about 4 or 5 minutes left of this. So a specific question again that's come in is, how do we take over the world? No, I'm kidding. It's actually, how do we approach scalability? How do we scale the various products and services that we've been talking about? What's our approach to that? I'll throw that out there. Any one of you can catch.
Yeah, great. I can have a stab. So again, what do you mean when you talk about scale? So there is the adoption lens to it, where it's like, okay, actually scaling how much our products are used and how much of the process and the work that the firm does is being carried out in what we consider best practice and what we enforce with not enforce, but we support with our tooling. There's also the level of scale of how do we deliver our work faster. And one thing we try to do here is capture knowledge as good as we can. When teams use our products, they do a lot of work, and a lot of insight is being generated as part of that. And we really want to make sure that the next person coming along using the same tool on a similar problem, that they have a kind of like foundation to start off with. And from like a visual design perspective, it might be, somebody's built this type of visualization for themselves, and then we find out that actually a lot of people could benefit from that. But that leads in all kinds of areas.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. A specific question, I'm not sure if any of you can answer this. Does Causal Next work with categorical data?
Yes, it does.
So I think it doesn't work with continuous data, because what you have to do is you have to discretize it, because it only works with categorical data.
Yeah, it only works with categorical data. So.
Excellent, thank you. And then, Zain, a question for you. How much of the focus is on data structures and algorithms as compared to machine learning knowledge in the interview process?
So for the software engineering interviews, we don't look for too much machine learning sort of experience, because that's what the machine learning engineers are for. Mm-hmm. So there is sort of a good amount of focus on data structures and algorithms, because that's just sort of the foundational stuff, as you would find at interviews pretty much any other tech company. Mm-hmm. But I think what is slightly different is that we also do a bit of system design. So I think that's something that was slightly different from other places. We've got the data structures and algorithms, and also system design, which is how can you build up a system sort of from the ground up. What's your thought process around building it up? What things you take into account, which is actually quite relevant to the work that we do in labs. So yeah.
How much do you know about interview process for machine learning engineers?
A little bit. So I think with machine learning engineers, we also have data structures and algorithms, because we are looking for them to have good software engineering skills alongside their machine learning experience. Okay. And then we also sort of assess their machine learning engineering experience and knowledge using usual data science, the usual process for data science interviews, so case studies and things like that, alongside the data structures and algorithms.
Brilliant. Thanks, Zain. I've just been told to shut up. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate your questions, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights and knowledge and all the rest of it. To folks on the phone and on Zoom, we very much hope you'll get in touch. You're very welcome to talk to us about the next chapter of QB Labs and how you might want to join us and fit into that. We are looking for software engineers, product managers, designers, data engineers, data scientists, machine learning engineers, everybody basically. Everybody, come join us and come talk to us. We're very happy to have more conversations with you and answer as many questions as we can. Follow us on Medium, on Instagram. We are QuantumBlack. Facebook and LinkedIn. We're everywhere. Just come find us.
You can go start the
you.
repos as well on GitHub.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.